Welcome. Let's briefly review concepts of power and influence in decision making. Influence in organizations is not unidirectional. In other words, it's not top-down. Rather, it involves multiple actors and directions in a complex web of power relationships. In order to understand these complex processes, we need to understand the terminology used by theorists. Influence is the effect of one person on another. The amount and type of influence varies considerably. Commitment. The most successful type of influence is when a person agrees with a request and makes an effort to carry it out. The term compliance is used to describe when an individual agrees to carry out a request, but is apathetic and will only make a minimal effort. This may be acceptable for some simple routine tasks, but for more complex tasks it is less successful, as the target person's attitude has not been altered. Power refers to the political leader's ability to get an individual to do something. The power gap refers to the fact that having formal authority in terms of office and position is rarely enough to get the job done. Multiple forms of power are needed to close the gap. Relying on one form of power may make the manager more vulnerable. Power relationships refer to the downward power of the leader or manager over subordinates and the upward power of subordinates over the manager, and the lateral power of the manager over others in the organization. It's multidirectional. There are three sources of power that leaders have at their disposal: position power, personal power, and political power. Sources of power in organizations may be derived from a person's position in the organization. Position power includes legitimate authority, control over resources, information, punishments, and ecological control. Power may also depend on personal attributes and the interpersonal relationship between the leader and subordinate. Personal power includes expertise, friendship, and charisma. Also, power may depend on political processes. Political power, including controlling decisions, forming coalitions, and co-opting opponents. Let's take a closer look at the 5 elements that make up position power. First, formal authority. Formal power stems from formal authority. It comes from the office or position and is often referred to as legitimate power. It involves the perceived right of one individual in the hierarchy to influence the behavior of others lower in the hierarchy who are under their direct control. Second, control over resources. Control over scarce resources stems from the leader's position in the hierarchy and includes compensation, career advancement, recognition, and status symbols. Third, control over punishments. Refer to sanctions for unacceptable behavior, including reassignment and firing workers. Fourth, control over information. Information is power. Access to and control over information and its dissemination to others in an organization is a form of power. Information is accessed through networks in and outside of the organization. The higher in the organization you are, the greater your access to information from multiple sources. Leaders in higher positions have the opportunity to interpret information for others and distort it, as well as selectively distribute information to direct the course of action in decision-making processes. Fifth, ecological control. Ecological control refers to a leader's ability to construct the physical work environment and the social conditions of work. It is referred to as situational engineering. This may involve the use of technology, job design, organizational structures, authority systems, information systems, goals, and work appraisal systems. Now, let's take a look at 3 types of personal power. 1. Expertise. Expert knowledge in problem solving or performing tasks establishes a dependency on the expert. The more important the problem in the organization, the greater the power of the expert. Second, friendship and loyalty. Referent power of a leader over the subordinate involves showing concern for the needs and feelings of others, demonstrating trust and respect for others, and treating people fairly. Third, charisma. Charisma is an intense emotional attraction to a leader. Charismatic leaders have insight into the hopes, aspirations, and values of followers, and are able to create and communicate a vision of the future that generates their commitment. There are three components of political power, including control over decision processes. Political action is designed to gain influence over important decisions, such as the allocation of resources or the development of plans and policies. Direct control over decisions may involve placing your people in key positions or decision bodies to influence the decisions made. It may also be exercised indirectly by developing the criteria upon which decisions are made. Second, coalitions. You get more acting together than acting alone. Coalitions and alliances help members get what they want. These actions may be within the organization or outside of the organization's boundaries and include unions, coalitions of institutions of higher education, purchasing cooperative, and other things like that. Third, co-optation. When individuals who oppose your position are brought into the decision process, they learn more about the problem, are subjected to socialization of others, and consequently may change their opinion and support the group's decision. A classic example of co-optation was described by Selznick in his study of the Tennessee Valley Authority. The power-influence approach assumes that leadership is given to those who hold certain positions in the organization. Contrary to popular belief, however, the influence of a leader doesn't automatically come with the individual's official position in the organization. It must be granted by those being led. Researchers have identified sources of influence or power over participants that enable leaders to lead. What I'd like to do now is discuss the 5 major sources of leader influence over subordinates in some detail. First, referent power. Referent power is a source of influence that depends on the ability of a leader to attract followers based on his or her personality, the respect they have for the person, and their being in agreement with the leader's ideas. Examples of leaders having referent power include Archbishop Desmond Tutu, Mahatma Gandhi, and Martin Luther King. Referent power may also be linked to a person's close working relationship with a powerful individual in an organization. Subordinates may view an individual who has the title such as deputy superintendent as acting on the superintendent's behalf, which results in him or her having the power to influence others. The use of referent power can lead to building trust, loyalty, and commitment among subordinates, which in turn require less supervision. In practice, when using referent power, requests may be made on the basis of friendship, personal appeal, or the need for subordinates to give support because of the importance of the task to the leader. This approach is more likely to result in commitment. Another effective way to use referent power is for the leader to model the desired behavior by performing duties in a proper manner in hopes that the subordinates will imitate the leader behavior. Second, expert power. Expert power is grounded in the fact that the group being led needs the ability and knowledge of a leader. The expert power of the principal or superintendent depends on his or her education, training, and experience. Because it is a very important source of influence, they must be technically skilled in areas such as management, supervision of instruction, staff development, and curriculum. When a principal or superintendent uses expert power, it is more likely that he or she will also be able to establish a climate of trust in the school or district. subordinates will be more likely to be self-motivated and require less supervision. In practice, expert power is also exercised in the form of rational persuasion based on evidence that the request is the most desirable and productive course of action. Success in using expert power depends on the leader's credibility, communication skills, and technical knowledge. Rational persuasion is most effective when the target person shares the leader's objectives and is convinced by the leader's rational argument. Effective leaders do not flaunt their superior knowledge, lecture, or quickly dismiss others' opinions. Third, legitimate power. Legitimate power is the power that is associated with the leader's official position or formal authority in the school or district. Legitimate power is based on a shared understanding that the leader has the right to tell the subordinate what to do. For example, both teachers and principals in schools share the perception that the principal has the right to expect teachers to complete assigned work in the school. Although legitimate power may be initially useful, principals or superintendents who use it to the exclusion of other types of influence are considered less effective and may create dissatisfaction, resistance, alienation, and obtain only minimal compliance. In practice, if a request is perceived by subordinates to be within the leader's scope of authority, it is considered legitimate and will be carried out. Referring to rules and regulations or deferring to the directives of superiors may clear up challenges to a leader's legitimate position. If resistance is encountered, you may want to shift to another type of power using coercive power as the last resort. Fourth, reward power. Reward power relates to the leader's use of rewards to accomplish his or her goals for the organization. Examples of rewards include increased salary, public praise, desired teaching assignments, and promotion. The strength of reward power may vary with both the amount of reward controlled by the leader, the type of reward, and the strength of the subordinate's desire for the reward. In order to use reward power, principals or superintendents must learn from teachers or central office personnel what they value and then use this as a basis for reward power. Although reward power is useful for influencing teacher performance behavior in the short term, its frequent use may lead to teachers becoming dependent, feeling manipulated, and increasingly dissatisfied. In practice, promising rewards for task completion, such as salary, promotion, and special privileges, or in the case of working with peers, promise for future support, are common uses of reward power. Compliance with the leader's request will be more likely if the reward is something valued by the target person and the leader has credibility in terms of being able to deliver on the promise. Commitment, however, may not result as individuals resent being dependent on authority figures. Reward power in the form of symbolic recognition, however, may be more effective, especially when it's tied to task accomplishment and performance. Fifth, coercive power. Coercive power refers to the ability of the leader to control subordinates through the threat of punishment for non-compliance and is the opposite of reward power. Examples of coercive power include reprimands, threats to punish, giving individuals less desirable assignments, and withholding salary increases. Although coercive power may be appropriate under certain circumstances, its use may only lead to temporary compliance. Its use as a dominant form of influence will produce undesirable side effects, including fear, revenge, and alienation, which may lead to low performance, dissatisfaction, and high turnover among personnel. Now let's look at the relative effectiveness of uses of power on worker satisfaction. The leader's success depends on his or her ability to appropriately use different sources of influence or power. Expert and reference power were strongly related to employee satisfaction and job performance. Coercive power, on the other hand, reduced worker satisfaction and job performance. Legitimate and coercive power were the least effective means of gaining subordinates' acceptance of change. These findings are similar to the results of Balderston's research undertaken in the United States and Canada that focused on the relationship between sources of principals' power and satisfaction and performance of teachers. He found that teachers reported the greatest amount of satisfaction when their principal used expert power to influence their behavior, and reported the greatest amount of dissatisfaction when the principal used coercive power. When teachers had greater satisfaction, they had higher morale, were more effective in helping students learn, were more willing to experiment with new ideas, and were more likely to suggest ways to improve the school. In addition, this study reported that the same relationship held true for students. This table summarizes French and Raven's work on the sources of leader influence over subordinates and likely outcomes. It may prove useful as a quick reference. The question, how much power should you use, is central to effective leadership. How much power you use depends on the circumstances or the context in which you are working, what needs to be accomplished, and what the leader's skill is in using available sources of power. Here are 4 rules of thumb that may prove helpful. First, more power is needed when changing attitudes and behavior. Second, less power is needed when issues are low priority or when the leader has considerable support from subordinates within the organization. Third, expert and referent power are positively correlated with job satisfaction and performance of subordinates. And fourth, reward and coercive power often resulted in lower levels of job satisfaction and performance of subordinates. There are some differences in the use of power by men and women. C. Chris Bruner found that women tend to use power to or with, characteristics that are particularly effective in organizations and groups. Men, on the other hand, tend to use power over models that are associated with formal authority in the hierarchy of organizations and are less effective in generating commitment and job satisfaction. Because leadership may be learned, those who may initially be viewed as being less effective in some areas have the ability to improve. At this juncture, I'd like you to review what you've learned. Discuss the different sources or types of power that may be used by a leader to fill their power gap. Now, apply what you've learned to your own organization. Reflect on the sources of power that have been used by leaders in your organization and how you have reacted to them. Finally, and perhaps more importantly, use what you know in problem solving. Under what conditions would you use different sources of power to achieve your organization's goals? Are they mutually exclusive, situation, or complementary? I trust this review of power and influence in the political frame may enhance your effectiveness as a leader.